Being a private practice owner was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career as a psychiatric nurse practitioner. But with so many benefits of running your own practice, there are so many risks involved. And unfortunately, people don't understand that many of these risks can lead to failure as a private practice owner. And before jumping all in, I want you to truly understand that these things often do occur, and it's very common for many private practice owners to fail. And in this video, I want to be going over 5 main reasons why many private practices fail within the first few years. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel, LifeofaPsychNP. If you are new to this channel, let me formally introduce myself. I'm Darty. I'm a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner, and in this channel, I go over several different topics related to mental health, nurse practitioners, and specifically psychiatric nurse practitioners like myself. And I am running a series right now of growing my private practice, this is one of the episodes. So if you are interested in any of these topics, feel free to subscribe. Make sure you like this video because it helped me out so much, and follow me on Instagram at LifeofaPsychNP. Welcome back to another episode of growing my private practice. I know I haven't spent too much time on it, but I'm definitely going to make more videos on this now that I'm more heavily involved in my private practice, and I think that a lot of people should definitely know. As you all know, that I'm pretty heavily involved in the Psych NP community, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's people in real life, or talking to other providers around the country. There's so many different things that I'm involved in, and it gives me more opportunities to talk to a lot of different NPs, whether they were private practice owners, they're currently private practice owners, or working for someone else. And unfortunately, with talking to all of these people, you're gonna come across a lot of different stories that are gonna show why many private practices fail. And after speaking to many of them, I narrowed down my list to the main 5 reasons. Yes, I go over 5 a lot, but I think 5 is sweet. And unfortunately, it's crazy and it's sad that about 50% of private practices fail within the first 2 years. And it's tough, and I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of ups and downs, but it's something that you have to always understand the risk and why many people fail in order for you to be successful, so you could implement certain tools to be able to be successful. So mind you, this list isn't something to deter you from wanting to start your own private practice. It's more so being able to understand the reasons and implementing ways for you to succeed. No hate on people, more so ways for you to understand for you to succeed. So without further ado, let's go over 5 of the top reasons why many private practices fail within the first few years. So let's go. So the very first reason why many private practices fail within the first few years is their business is constantly in the red. Keyword, constantly. And if you're unfamiliar with this term, being in the red basically means you're spending more money than what you're earning or profiting, and maybe you're not, or maybe not profiting as much as you want compared to the industry standard, where it's more and more difficult for you to maintain afloat. And this is obviously one of the main reasons why many businesses fail, but it's important to recognize early on. Yes, it's understandable that you're in the red in the beginning because of all the upfront costs, whether you're paying for the collaborative physician, the lease, getting started in terms of getting your collaborative physician, or being able to get credentialed, or getting your business corporation started. All of those things, along with the lease, the EMR, the phone, the staff, all those things are gonna put you in the red, because you have to put certain things in place in order for you to start seeing patients and making money. But it's not a bad thing, and it's something that does happen. But when you're month after month, you're in the red, and it's just getting further and further more difficult and difficult for you to get towards a green, and you're constantly in the red, and it's worsening and worsening, that's where more people have problems, because sooner or later it's going to get to a point where one bad thing is going to happen, whether you're changing billers or whether you have a hiccup and you need to pay for something, or you need to get work done to your office space. You're going to get further into the red, and this can cause way more issues for the actual business owner, and they have to think about it. Is it worth being in the red every single month, because now I'm taking money out of my pocket, your savings, and all of these things just to be able to afford to stay afloat? And many people don't understand of all the costs or the upfront costs associated with starting your private practice and think you can just go in there and start seeing patients right away to make income. It's not that easy, and it does take some time. And if you're constantly in the red, yeah, it's gonna hurt. And sooner or later, you're gonna have to think, okay, is it time for me to shut down? And many private practices owners do that. And it's unfortunate, but it happens quite often. So the second reason why many private practices fail within the first few years is far too many unnecessary expenses. And this is a huge reason, and it's kind of piggybacking off of the first reason, but this is one that I wanted to isolate and tell you about, because so many people go into private practices wanting to get the best of everything. So you're thinking about, oh, I'm gonna get the best computer, oh, I'm gonna get the best EMR, oh, I'm gonna get the best staff out there and paying a very, very experienced staff, or I'm gonna get the best office space and make it beautiful. But realistically speaking, you don't need the best of everything, and people start to think that they have to have all of these best things in order for them to perform well, but that's not the case. And many of these private practice owners, yes, it's great wanting to get all of these things like the fancy toys or the fancy equipment, the fancy computer stuff. Yes, it's nice, but do you really need all of these things for you to see a patient? A lot of these private practices will start to do that, especially the ones that are failing. They'll buy all of these things, they'll just put it on their business credit or get credit cards and think that, oh, I don't have to think about it later on. And now all of these things start to add up. And especially if you're growing small and you buy all of these things up front and you're not seeing as many patients, and there's no guarantee that you're gonna see all these patients or all of these patients are gonna be able to come see you, because you have to think about all these other costs that are necessary versus unnecessary. And the main thing that people will look at, especially as they're starting to realize, okay, I'm more in the red, is all of these unnecessary things. And the sooner you're able to kind of shut that down and not have or pay for all of these unnecessary things, you'll start to realize, like, okay, I don't even need all of these things, because all I need are X, Y, Z in order for me to function. And that's the biggest thing, is you need to function, get your private practice going, have a good solid foundation, and work from there. And as you get more and more patients, then you can be able to kind of afford all of these unnecessary things, like the more expensive things or the things that you want, or fixing up your office, because it's easier to allocate the money that you're profiting in order for you to pay. But if you start off with purchasing all of these high-end cost equipment, you're going to be further in the red, and you're basically setting up your business to fail. So it's something to think about, especially early on. So the third reason on why many private practices fail within the first few years is you're spending too much time on administrative tasks. And this is a very, very tough one to deal with, and unfortunately it does occur, and it can lead to the demise of your private practice. And the reason why I say this is because in the beginning, a lot of private practice owners will start off slow. So they won't hire anyone, or they'll use their spouse, but for the most part, they won't hire anyone, and they'll do everything solo. So that means solo from calling the patient, setting up their appointment, being able to do their intake paperwork, being able to send out medications, do prior auth, do notes, things like that. In the beginning, it's very easy, and it's understandable because you only have a few patients and you don't necessarily have to deal with those things. But as your caseload starts to build up, a lot of your time will not only be seeing patients, but also dealing with all the administrative staff or administrative stuff, like doing all the notes, doing the prior auths, doing the disability paperwork, doing so many different things that aren't necessarily making you money. And if you're focusing primarily too much on the things that don't make you money, then it's going to be hard for you to do the things that do make you money, because now you're thinking about, okay, I have to schedule this person, I need to call this person back, I need to call the pharmacy for this, and you're not even focusing on patients, and that's going to lead to you like, oh, I don't even want to see the patient, or I don't want to deal with the patient, or maybe I can just push this new patient instead of seeing them, push them back, and hopefully they'll come back and I can deal with all this administrative task. And that's where people start to hurt their business, is because they focus too much on those administrative tasks because they know they need to keep their current patients happy, but they don't necessarily open themselves up to be able to see new patients. And that's difficult, right? And it's understandable because you want to keep your current patients happy, but at the same time, you want to get new patients. But something has to give. And as a person, as a private practice owner that did start off very, very slow, there was a point where I needed to make a decision. And it's difficult because you think about all the other costs you're already paying. You're like, oh man, how am I going to afford someone else? And if you think about it, is these tasks are going to be able to push some of these, or being able to hire some staff, you're going to be able to push some of these tasks away so you can start to see patients. And that's the biggest thing, is you want to be able to take that leap of faith to be able to hire someone and then see more patients, instead of the other way around where you do more of the administrative tasks and not see as many patients. And that's the difficult thing, is because the less and less patients you see, the less money you're going to make, or the less profit you're going to make. And in the beginning, it may make sense, like I said, because you're seeing them more frequently, but sooner or later, they're going to start getting stable and they don't want to be seen for a month or 2 months or 3 months, compared to when you were seeing them every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks. It's going to get further and further out, and patients don't want to come that often all the time. They want to be like, oh, I'm very stable, just send me my medications. And once it gets to that point, you're not going to be seeing as many patients. So you have to think about those consequences. Yes, you're going to be focusing on tasks and you're not having to pay money out to other people, but you're going to have so many administrative tasks and not enough patients to help profit. So it's definitely something you have to think of, especially if you're starting your own private practice. So fourth reason why many private practices fail within the first few years is the provider's availability or office hours are irregular or inconvenient for patients. And this is understandable, especially in the very beginning. A lot of the times, private practice owners will start off with either doing after hours or doing 1 day a week or on weekends. And it's all great, especially for you, because you can squeeze in your full-time job while still seeing patients on the side. But sooner or later, it's going to get to a point where a lot of these patients want to be seen on particular days because, like you, they do have jobs, or they're in school, or whatever the case is, they need particular times for you to be able to see them. And if you're not opening up your schedule to being able to see them because you're so afraid of whatever happening, then it's going to put you at a disadvantage. And that puts a lot of providers at a disadvantage because they see all of this money because they're working full time and they're getting all of these patients. But sooner or later, something has to budge because some of these patients won't want to see you. Maybe in the beginning, they're desperate to see you because they need help right away. But once they start to get stable and you don't offer them a good amount of hours or a schedule or a convenience to be able to book an appointment, they're just going to go somewhere else, or they're just going to leave your practice and go to the primary doctor to fill their medications. And unfortunately, this happens often. And I'm not saying these people are in the red and why they shut their private practice down is because they don't want to sacrifice giving up their full-time job. Because if you're, say for example, you're making $10,000 a month from your full-time job, then you have all the benefits and you're making $2,000 a month and on your side hustle, which is 12 grand, right? But from the full-time job, you need to be able to give up a day. Now you're going down a day, losing benefits and losing the amount of pay that you normally do in order for you to sacrifice another day. So you're going from 12 grand a month, now you're going down to 8 grand a month or 10 grand a month without benefits, and you have to pay for the benefits, and people always have to outweigh the pros versus cons, and they just shut down. And unfortunately that's the case. But a lot of the times, especially when you take that leap early on and giving yourself extra days and upfront, then this will help alleviate it. And it's a tough call because some people can't make that decision or are not able to make that decision, and it's something that is tough because patients will want certain hours, but if you can't give them those hours, they're not going to be able to see you, and that in turn makes less profit for you, and in turn potentially pushes you in the red, and boom, you're shutting down your practice. But it's important to have safety plans in place when you do make that transition, because it's important that you're able to provide all of this availability or flexibility within your schedule to be able to take as many patients as you can, so that transition is going to be a lot easier for you instead of kind of just being stagnant and not making money altogether. So the fifth and final reason, and the biggest reason on why many private practices fail within the first few years, is having poorly trained or unqualified staff. And this is a tough pill to swallow, because it's not saying that it's the provider's fault or the owner's fault, but it's something that can occur. Whether you didn't do your due diligence up front because you felt so overwhelmed with all of these tasks that you just wanted to hire anyone, or you felt like this provider was really good based off of a lot of their accolades and not understanding how they got to where they got to. And this is important because when you think about your experience as a patient or as someone that goes into an office, you want to have qualified people greeting you or being competent enough to be able to handle all of your needs. And then same thing when it goes to provider. You want to have an experience where you're having good customer experience, you're getting good outcomes, you're building that relationship, especially when it comes to mental health. You want to be able to have all of these things in place. But when you start to look at hiring, if you're hiring someone that's unqualified, or hiring someone that's unqualified for the front desk or as a provider, then it becomes way more difficult, because one, now you're having to constantly teach either the person that's up in the front desk or the provider up front on how to do all of these things. So now you're taking away your patient care time to be able to teach all of these things after the fact, instead of being able to look at it, put certain protocols and things into place to be able to teach them up front. Yes, it's going to take more time up front to be able to do so, but in the long run, it's going to be way more beneficial. But if you wait until they start to make mistakes, now in your head, you're like, dang, like what's going on? Let me go ahead and train them. Now you're trying to train them again, but they all have already all of these bad habits in place that they're just going to revert back to it, even though you train them. But if you're able to train them in the beginning, a lot of these bad habits they already had are all these bad habits that they thought they were going to have, or you may have had, but now they're not going to have because of the proper training. So, and this is important because even when you think about front desk staff, they do a lot and they have so many different responsibilities. And if you don't set certain guidelines up front, it's just going to go haywire. Same thing with providers. If you don't set certain things in place and be able to train them in the beginning, then a lot of these things can go haywire. So when you think about your experience, say for example, as a patient, you see the provider and you notice that, okay, they're not doing certain things that you like, especially as a patient. And now you complain, and as the owner, you're going to talk to the patient, and now you're thinking, okay, what's going on? So now you have to start looking at their charts. So you're going to look at the chart for that first patient, and you're like, oh, okay, I can see what happened and why they might have gotten this thing wrong, so let's try to fix it. Now in the back of your head, you're like, what happens to all the other patients they see? Are they having bad outcomes? Maybe they didn't hear anything from someone, or they might have just left the office because of their bad experience. Now you're looking into their chart. So it went from one chart you're looking at, now you're looking at all the patients they see because you're so worried. And now you have to go in, you have to educate, tell them to fix this, tell her to fix that, blah, blah, blah. And you're thinking like, why are many patients not staying? And now you're thinking like, oh, like what's going on? Now you have to take a step back, take time away from patients again to train them. But even if you train them properly, a lot of these things can go wrong. And that's the big thing. It's going to cause more stress, cause more anxiety. It's going to cause more issues for you, because not only are you having to deal with training someone, Now you're having to deal with your patient care, your patients, their patients, constantly looking it over, and the day you're supposed to be off, thinking it's going to alleviate the amount of time you see there from you seeing patients because they're seeing the patient. Now you're looking at all of their charts and micromanaging everything, and no one wants to be in a situation with that. And sooner or later something has to give. And unfortunately for the people that have had to shut down their practice because of certain people that were unqualified or they were not necessarily trained properly, now they have to deal with firing that person. And some people feel really bad about firing people, and unfortunately it's something you have to deal with, where you have to fire them, and now you have to start back from square one, which is going to take way more time away from you because you're going to train them up front. And instead of training that first person in the very beginning or hiring a person that was qualified, that had experience already from the beginning, now you're thinking about, okay, now I have to do all of these other things. And that's where people will have issues. It went from, okay, maybe I'm gonna see patients, instead of seeing patients 5 days a week, now I'm 3 days a week because I'm giving patients over to the new provider. And now you're basically seeing the same patients and doing the charting for those patients because you're worried so much about the provider. Plus now you're having to train someone else if you need to do that. And because the provider that you fired was seeing a lot more patients, now you have to see all of those patients while still training. And it just becomes a wave an issue. And it's something where as a business owner, you have to deal with, and you have to expect the unexpected. But at the same time, it's difficult, and it's something that many people can't deal with. And if you can't deal with that, then that's where people are like, okay, I need to shut it down. And that's what happens. And unfortunately, it happens often. Well guys, I know this was a pretty long video, but I definitely wanted to shed light on this because these reasons are huge. And the better prepared you are to understanding these reasons, the better prepared you can be by trying to figure out ways for you to avoid experiencing these things. And the better times, or the better chances of you setting yourself up in the correct position is going to help you out in the long run. And that's the main reason why I wanted to make this video. Well guys, if you stayed here this long, I truly appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure you like this video or subscribe, and comment down below what you feel like is the main reason why many private practices fail, whether it's your experience or you worked for someone that private practice had a shut down, or other reasons why private practices may shut down or may fail. And I'd like to hear all of your comments, and if you have any questions about any of these questions or these reasons, comment down below. I'll be more than welcome to answer them for you. But until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.